Whisperwood. A fantasy sleep story, presented by Bedtime Stories. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes, take a slow, deep breath. And now, let the story begin. Lyra lived in a small, moss-roofed cottage nestled so close to the ancient Whisperwood that the oldest branches of the sentinel oaks brushed against her bedroom window. From her bed, she could reach out and almost touch the rough, kind bark, feeling the slow, steady pulse of the forest. Other children in the village of Oakhaven might have found living so near the deep woods a little spooky, but Lyra loved it more than anything. She was a quiet girl, with hair the color of sun-warmed oak leaves and eyes like the deepest part of a shaded forest pool, and she had a secret. Lyra could hear the whispers. Not the ordinary whispers of the wind rustling through leaves, or the soft murmur of a stream over pebbles. These were different. They were the true voice of the Whisperwood itself, a symphony of ancient thoughts, forgotten lullabies, and the quiet, contented hum of growing things. The sentinel oaks would whisper tales of seasons long past, of tiny acorn sprites and the long-legged deer that danced through their shadows. The willow-weep trees by the stream shared secrets of cool water and the silver fish that darted beneath their trailing branches. Even the smallest glow moss clinging to damp rocks added its own soft, luminous sigh to the chorus. Her parents, good and kind folk who tended their small garden and mended shoes for the village, knew Lyra had a special way with the forest. She always knew where the sweetest berries grew, or which toadstool caps glowed brightest after a rain. But they didn't hear the whispers. When Lyra tried to explain the stories the trees told, her mother would smile patiently and say, "That's your imagination, dear, a wonderful thing indeed." Her father would chuckle and remind her, "The forest has many sounds, little one, you just have a good ear for them." Lyra didn't mind. The whispers were hers, a private, precious gift. Every morning, before the sun had fully chased the mist from the valleys, Lyra would rise and press her ear to the window pane, listening. The forest would stir, its whispers growing from a sleepy murmur to a lively chatter as the creatures within began their day. She'd hear the soft thrum of newly unfurled fern fronds, the excited squeak of a squirrel discovering a hidden nut, and the deep resonant sigh of the old heartwood tree, a magnificent ancient oak that stood at the very center of the Whisperwood, its roots rumored to reach the deepest slumbering magic of the earth. The Whisperwood was a place of breathtaking beauty and quiet magic. Sunlight filtered through a canopy of leaves that shimmered in 1,000 shades of green, gold, and russet. Patches of luminescent moss lit the forest floor like scattered constellations. Flowers Lyra had never seen outside the woods bloomed in vibrant hues, some even singing tiny, bell-like melodies when a gentle breeze passed by. Little streams babbled and chuckled over smooth stones, their water so clear you could see the intricate patterns on the streambed pebbles. Butterflies with wings like stained glass drifted through the sunbeams, and the air itself felt thick with ancient, benevolent power. Lyra's parents had always set clear boundaries. "You may wander in the whispering edge, Lyra," her mother would say, gesturing to the lighter, more familiar parts of the forest, but never ever venture beyond the Elder Stone. The Elder Stone was a massive gray boulder, half covered in emerald moss, that marked the point where the familiar paths faded into deeper, less trodden ways. Beyond it, the trees grew taller, closer, and the shadows seemed to deepen even at noon. "The heart of the Whisperwood holds ancient secrets, Lyra," her father had explained gently. "And some secrets are best left undisturbed, for your own safety." Lyra understood their concern. The whispers beyond the Elder Stone were different, more profound, more complex, sometimes almost overwhelming. They spoke of things too grand for her young mind to fully grasp, of magic that shaped mountains and rivers, of creatures that had walked the earth before humans learned to speak. But even with the warnings, a deep yearning tugged at her heart, a quiet curiosity that pulsed in time with the forest's own rhythm. She knew, deep down, that the Whisperwood wasn't just a place of ancient secrets. It was a place of ancient answers. Then, one crisp autumn evening, as the first chill of winter began to creep into the air, Lyra noticed a change. She was curled by her window, listening to the forest settle for the night. Usually, the evening whispers were a gentle chorus of contentment, a soft lullaby sung by 1,000 sleeping leaves. But tonight, they were different. Fainter, for one. And beneath the usual soothing sounds, Lyra detected a new note, a subtle thread of sadness. Or was it worry? The glow moss on the sentinel oaks, usually bright enough to cast dancing shadows on her wall, seemed dimmer. The soft, bell-like chime of the evening bloom flowers was muted, almost hesitant. The robust, deep hum of the heartwood tree, which Lyra could always feel as a gentle thrumming in her own chest, was noticeably weaker. It was as if the very breath of the Whisperwood was faltering. Lyra's heart gave a little jolt of alarm. She pressed her ear harder against the window, trying to decipher the disjointed, hushed whispers. They spoke of fading light, of silence creeping, of the song breaking. The words were scattered, like leaves caught in a frantic wind, but the message was clear. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. The next morning, the change was even more pronounced. The sun struggled to pierce the canopy, as if the trees themselves were holding back its light. The usual morning chorus was subdued, lacking its usual vibrant energy. The whispers were filled with a low, mournful sigh that echoed the feeling in Lyra's own heart. "Mother," Lyra said at breakfast, her voice small. "The Whisperwood. It feels unwell." Her mother glanced out the window at the familiar green expanse. "It's just the autumn, dear. The trees are preparing for their winter slumber." "But the glow moss isn't glowing," Lyra insisted, "and the whispers are sad." Her father patted her head. "Perhaps you're just feeling a bit under the weather yourself, Lyra. A good day of helping in the garden will cheer you up." Lyra sighed. They didn't understand. How could they, when they couldn't hear the true voice of the forest? She knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that this was more than just autumn. The Whisperwood was hurting. And the whispers, fainter now but more urgent, seemed to be calling to share. She spent the morning in the garden, dutifully pulling weeds, but her mind was elsewhere. Her gaze kept drifting to the deeper woods, beyond the elderstone, where the shadows seemed to cling a little more stubbornly, even in the morning sun. The whispers grew louder in her mind, a jumble of pleas and warnings, an insistent tug at her heart. She couldn't ignore it any longer. The forest was her friend, her confidante, and it needed her. As soon as her parents were occupied with mending a particularly stubborn pair of boots, Lyra slipped away. She packed a small satchel with a crust of bread, a bottle of water, and a smooth river-worn stone that always brought her comfort. Taking a deep breath, she walked past the familiar sentinel oaks, past the chattering ferns, and towards the elder stone. Her stomach fluttered with a mix of fear and excitement. She had never disobeyed her parents' direct instruction before, not in such a significant way. But the forest's distress felt more important than any rule. The whispers, now a clear guiding current, seemed to pull her forward, a gentle hand at her back. The elder stone loomed ancient and silent. Its mossy surface felt cool beneath her hand. Taking one last look back at her cottage, now a distant, safe speck, Lyra stepped past the boundary. Immediately, the air changed. It grew cooler, richer, imbued with a deeper, more potent scent of earth and ancient growth. The trees here were truly enormous, their trunks wider than her outstretched arms, their canopies so dense that only slivers of sunlight pierced through, creating shifting patterns on the forest floor. The glow moss was indeed dimmer here, its faint luminescence struggling against the encroaching shadows. The singing flowers were silent, their petals drooping. The whispers, however, grew stronger. They swirled around her, a torrent of ancient worries and sorrow. They spoke of the fading song, the cracked harmony, and a shadow at the source. Lyra listened intently, her brow furrowed in concentration, trying to piece together the fragmented story. She walked carefully, her small boots crunching softly on the fallen leaves, her eyes scanning the forest for any clue, any sign of what was causing such distress. She walked for what felt like hours, deeper and deeper into the Whisperwood. The paths here were barely discernible, overgrown with tangled roots and thickets of brambles. Yet the whispers guided her, a gentle, insistent pull. They led her past colossal, gnarled trees that looked like sleeping giants, past shimmering waterfalls that usually sparkled, but now seemed strangely muted, their spray lacking its usual effervescence. The magical creatures she sometimes glimpsed, the darting sprites, the shy pixies, were nowhere to be seen, as if they too had retreated from the encroaching sorrow. Finally, the whispers coalesced, pointing her towards a break in the dense foliage. Pushing aside a curtain of trailing vines, Lyra stepped into a clearing she had only ever heard whispered about, the Moonpetal Glade. It was a place of legendary beauty, a sacred heart of the Whisperwood. In Lyra's imagination, it had always been bathed in a soft, silvery light, emanating from the thousands of moon petals that bloomed there. These unique flowers, the color of moonlight, pulsed with a gentle inner glow, creating a breathtaking, ethereal illumination. Legend said they bloomed only under the purest magic, drawing their light directly from the heartwood tree itself. But today, the moon petal glade was dim. The usually vibrant glade was shrouded in a dull twilight. The moon petals, instead of pulsing with their characteristic silvery light, were a faint, sickly white, their delicate petals drooping. Many lay wilting on the mossy ground, their inner glow extinguished. A profound sadness hung in the air, a heavy silence that pressed down on Lyra's chest. In the very center of the glade, amidst the wilting moon petals, something stirred. It was small, no bigger than her thumb, and lay huddled in a patch of still glowing moss. As Lyra drew closer, she saw it was a glimmerwing. Glimmerwings were among the most delicate and magical creatures of the Whisperwood. They resembled tiny moths, with wings of iridescent gossamer, that usually shimmered with all the colors of a rainbow, each beat scattering a shower of golden dust. They were living sparks of light, messengers of joy, and keepers of the forest's brightest melodies. But this glimmerwing was different. Its wings were dull, its once vibrant colors faded to a murky gray. It fluttered weakly, struggling to lift itself from the moss. Only a faint, intermittent flicker of light emanated from its tiny body. "Oh," Lyra whispered, her heart aching. She knelt gently, extending a careful finger. The glimmerwing, sensing her presence, lifted its tiny head. Its eyes, usually bright pinpricks of light, were clouded with distress. It chirped, a series of frantic, desperate clicks and whistles that echoed the sorrowful whispers around them. Lyra, with her unique understanding, felt the creature's pain like her own. It communicated a terrible urgency, a feeling of desolation. It pointed a tiny, trembling antennae towards the ground at the very heart of the glade, where the moon petals were most withered. Then, with a supreme effort, it fluttered a few inches into the air, tracing a wobbly path deeper into the forest, before collapsing back onto the moss. The song, the glimmerwing, seemed to project into Lyra's mind a desperate, silent plea. The song of the Whisperwood is fading. The source, it is darkening. Lyra looked at the patch of ground the glimmerwing had pointed to. Pushing aside the wilting moon petals, she saw it, a tiny, almost invisible fissure in the earth, no wider than her finger. From it, a faint, sad hum emanated, a sound Lyra recognized as the core note of the Whisperwood's song, the deep, resonant thrum of the heartwood tree. But it was barely a whisper, a strained, dying note. It was here that the magic of the glade truly originated, and it was here that the magic was at its weakest. The glimmerwing, its tiny body trembling, managed another faint flicker of light, pointing a wing towards the deeper forest once more, then back to the fissure, then to Lyra. A shadow, it communicated, a pervasive, cold presence that was slowly silencing the song, draining the light from the moon petals, and dimming the very heart of the Whisperwood. Lyra felt a surge of resolve. The fear that had been a knot in her stomach began to loosen, replaced by a fierce determination. The Whisperwood wasn't just a place of magic. It was a living, breathing entity, and it was suffering. And it was asking for help. The whispers around her, though still tinged with sorrow, now carried a new note. Hope. They urged her on, gently affirming her presence, telling her she was meant to be here now. She looked down at the tiny, exhausted glimmerwing. Its dim eyes pleaded with her. Lyra knew what she had to do. She couldn't just stand by and watch the Whisperwood fade. Her heart, so attuned to the forest's rhythm, wouldn't allow it. "I'll help you," Lyra whispered, her voice firm. "I'll help the Whisperwood. Tell me what to do." The glimmering seemed to understand. A faint, renewed flicker of light pulsed through its tiny body. It tried to fly again, this time managing a short, steady hover. It turned its head, looking towards the deepest, darkest part of the forest, a place Lyra had only ever heard of in the most hushed, ancient whispers. A place where the oldest, most powerful magic resided, and perhaps where the source of the fading song lay hidden. Taking a deep breath, Lyra stood up. The silence of the glade, broken only by the faint, dying hum from the fissure, felt like a sacred trust. The glimmering, a tiny beacon of fading light, began to drift slowly towards the dense, mysterious heart of the Whisperwood. Lyra followed, her small hand clutching the comfort stone in her satchel, her heart pounding with a mix of trepidation and unwavering purpose. She was venturing deeper than she had ever dared, into the unknown, following a tiny creature and the fading song of a beloved forest, ready to face whatever ancient secrets lay ahead. The Whisperwood embraced Lyra in a breath of cool, damp air that smelled of rich earth, ancient bark, and something else, a faint, sweet tang, like forgotten dreams. The familiar path she knew from playful forays faded almost instantly behind her, swallowed by a sudden thickening of the trees. Here, the canopy was so dense that only slivers of twilight pierced through, dappling the forest floor in shifting patterns of shadow and faint, mossy luminescence. The glimmering, no bigger than Lyra's thumb, pulsed with a softer, more insistent glow, its light a fragile beacon against the encroaching gloom. It didn't fly high, but rather wove a path close to the ground, as if tracing invisible currents known only to itself. The trees themselves were different here. Their bark was a tapestry of deep greens and browns, textured like old, wise faces, adorned with beards of hanging moss that swayed in unseen breezes. Roots, thick as an anaconda, snaked across the forest floor, forming natural staircases and treacherous pitfalls. Lyra had to watch her step, her eyes constantly scanning the ground ahead, guided by the glimmerwind's soft luminescence. The silence was profound, broken only by the rustle of her own movements and the faint, almost imperceptible hum that was the fading song itself, a sound like distant chimes struggling against a thick velvet curtain. As Lyra delved deeper, the ground beneath her feet grew softer, covered in a carpet of emerald moss that seemed to absorb all sound. The air grew heavier, thicker with the scent of damp earth, and something else, a metallic tang, like old copper. The glimmerwing led her to a place where the trees seemed to lean in, their branches intertwined, forming a living archway. Beyond it, the light diminished even further, plunging Lyra into a world painted in shades of gray and deep indigo. Here, the forest floor wasn't just moss, but a network of delicate, glowing fungi that pulsed with a soft internal light. Tiny, bioluminescent lanterns illuminating a path Lyra would never have found otherwise. She noticed, too, that the silence was not entirely empty. A faint, rhythmic whisper seemed to emanate from the very air around her. It wasn't the song, not exactly, but more like the forest breathing, a slow, deep intake and exhalation that resonated in her bones. The glimmerwing hovered, then darted, its light momentarily flaring as if in warning. Ahead, the path of glowing fungi ended abruptly at the edge of a vast, sprawling thicket of vines. These weren't ordinary vines. They were thick as Lyra's arm, covered in needle-sharp thorns that glinted faintly in the glimmerwing's light. They twisted and coiled, forming an impenetrable barrier that seemed to writhe with a life of its own, blocking any further passage. Lyra approached cautiously, her small hand instinctively reaching for the comfort stone in her satchel. Its smooth, cool surface was a familiar anchor. The vines seemed to sense her presence, swaying slightly, their thorns bristling. A low, rustling murmur emanated from them, like 1,000 tiny voices whispering an ancient warning. Lyra tried to find a gap, a way through, but the thorny wall was seamless, reaching higher than she could see. She knew she couldn't force her way. The thorns looked too sharp, too numerous. Then, she remembered something her grandmother had told her about the Whisperwood. The forest listens, child, not with ears but with heart. Speak gently, and it may speak back. Taking a deep breath, Lyra closed her eyes and focused on the fading hum of the song. She imagined reaching out, not with her hands but with her spirit, to the vines. She thought of her purpose, of the love she had for the forest, of the urgency to bring back its vibrant melody. Slowly, she began to hum a soft, wordless tune, one her grandmother often sang, a lullaby of growing things and gentle rain. As the melody drifted from her lips, the whispering of the vines seemed to soften, to change. The thorns, which had been rigid and menacing, seemed to relax, their points drawing back ever so slightly. The glimmering, which had been hovering nervously, pulsed with a brighter, more steady glow, as if encouraging her. Lyra opened her eyes. Before her, a narrow archway, barely wide enough for her to squeeze through, had opened in the thorny wall. The vines, still thick and numerous, had parted, their tendrils gently curving inward, forming a tunnel of intertwined branches. With a grateful whisper, Lyra stepped through, carefully avoiding the remaining thorns. The tunnel was cool and fragrant, the air thick with the scent of sap and damp earth. On the other side, the forest floor opened up into a glade unlike anything she had ever seen. It was a place of breathtaking beauty, bathed in a soft ethereal light that seemed to emanate from the very air. Towering trees, even older than those she had passed, formed a cathedral-like ceiling overhead, their leaves shimmering with an inner glow. From their branches hung delicate, bell-shaped flowers that chimed with a faint crystalline sound whenever a breeze stirred. But the most striking feature was the ground itself. It was not earth or moss but a vast, shallow pool of water, so clear and still that it perfectly mirrored the glowing canopy above. And within this pool, like scattered jewels, were hundreds of luminous stones, each pulsing with its own gentle light, casting dancing reflections on the undersides of the leaves. The Glimmerwing zipped ahead, its light suddenly seeming pale in comparison to the radiant beauty of the glade. It settled on the edge of the pool, its tiny body trembling. As Lyra approached, a ripple disturbed the surface of the water, and from beneath a cluster of glowing stones, something emerged. It was small, no taller than Lyra's knee, and seemed to be made entirely of living moss and tiny iridescent fungi. Two large luminous eyes, like polished emeralds, regarded her with an ancient, gentle wisdom. It had delicate, twig-like limbs and a crown of tiny glowing mushrooms on its head. This was no ordinary forest creature. This was a mossling, a fabled guardian of the deepest woods, usually only found in the oldest stories. The mossling tilted its head, and a sound like the rustling of dry leaves, soft and melodic, emanated from it. "Welcome, child of the sun-drenched paths," it whispered, its voice surprisingly deep and resonant. "Few ever find the glade of whispering waters, and fewer still pass the thicket of silent thorns." Lyra, though startled, felt no fear from the mossling's presence. Its eyes held only kindness. "I am Lyra," she replied, her voice a little shaky but firm. "I seek the heart of the song. It is fading." She gestured to the Glimmerwing, which now hovered near the mossling's shoulder, its light seeming to plead. The mossling's emerald eyes turned to the Glimmerwing, then back to Lyra. "Indeed, the song falters. A wound deep and old has festered." It gestured with a delicate moss-covered hand towards the center of the pool. "The fissure, you know, is but a tear in the fabric. The true unraveling began long before, when the heartwood began to lose its rhythm." "The heartwood?" Lyra asked, her brow furrowing. "The ancient core of the Whisperwood," the mossling explained. "Where the roots of all life intertwine and the song is born. It pulses with the life force of this forest, and indeed all connected lands. For generations its rhythm was steady, strong, a vibrant symphony. But a shadow has fallen upon it, a slow, creeping chill that steals its warmth and mutes its voice." "What kind of shadow?" Lyra asked, her heart sinking at the thought of a problem so vast. The mossling sighed, a sound like wind through willow branches. "A forgotten shadow, a slumbering sorrow that has been stirred. It feeds on the song's resonance, not with malice, but with a deep, consuming emptiness. It is called the echoing hush." "The echoing hush," Lyra repeated, the words feeling heavy on her tongue. It sounded like something that had no sound, yet devoured it all. "It awoke," the mossling continued, "when the balance shifted, when the ancient pact between the sun and the moon, the earth and the sky, was momentarily strained by the careless thoughts of the outer world. The fissure was a consequence, a bleeding wound, not the cause. To mend the fissure is to close a symptom. To save the song, you must find the source of the echoing hush, and soothe its ancient sorrow." Lyra felt a surge of determination. This was bigger than she had imagined, but the mossling's words gave her a clearer purpose. "How do I find it? How do I soothe it?" The mossling dipped its head. "The Glimmerwing knows the way to the heartwood. It senses the song's weakening pulse. But the path beyond this glade is treacherous, filled with illusions and tests of spirit. The echoing hush casts its own mists, confusing the mind and dampening the heart." It reached into the luminous water, its hand glowing as it retrieved a small, smooth stone, unlike the others. This one pulsed with a soft, warm light, like a captured firefly. "Take this starstone. It will not banish the mists, but it will keep your spirit clear, your purpose true. And when you are truly lost, it will whisper the path." Lyra gently took the starstone. It was warm in her hand, and a sense of calm settled over her. "Thank you, kind mossling," she said, genuinely grateful. "Go now, brave child," the mossling urged, its luminous eyes fixed on her. "The song grows fainter with each passing moment. The heartwood awaits." With a renewed sense of urgency, Lyra nodded. The glimmerwing zipped around her head once, as if impatient, then flew towards the far side of the glade, where the light seemed to dim once more. Lyra followed, clutching the starstone in one hand and her comfort stone in her satchel. She walked across the shimmering pool, the cool water lapping gently at her ankles, the luminous stones beneath her feet lighting her way. She passed out of the glade of whispering waters, and into a landscape that felt entirely different. Here, the trees were not just old but ancient, their trunks so wide that Lyra could not embrace them with her arms. Their branches were gnarled and twisted, reaching up like supplicating hands to a sky that was almost entirely obscured. The ground was no longer soft moss or shimmering water, but a tangled mess of roots and decaying leaves, interspersed with patches of strange velvety fungi that glowed with a sickly green light. This part of the Whisperwood felt older, heavier, steeped in layers of forgotten time. The air grew colder, and the rhythmic breathing she had felt earlier was replaced by an oppressive stillness. This was the domain of the echoing hush. Lyra felt a prickle of unease, a sense of something vast and sorrowful lurking just beyond her sight. The glimmerwing, though still leading, now flew lower, its light flickering more erratically. The path was no longer clear. It seemed to shift and fade before her eyes. Trees that had been on her left would suddenly appear on her right, and familiar landmarks would vanish, only to reappear moments later in a different direction. This was the mists of confusion the mossling had spoken of. Lyra felt a wave of disorientation wash over her. Her memories of the path she had taken, even of her own name, seemed to shimmer at the edges of her mind. Doubt, cold and insidious, began to creep in. Why am I here? What am I doing? This is too big for me. Well, the thought was a whisper, faint but persistent. She squeezed her eyes shut, and instinctively, her hand tightened around the starstone. A jolt of warmth, like a tiny spark, spread from the stone through her arm, clearing her mind. The whispering doubt receded. She opened her eyes. The path was still confusing, but her hyperpurpose was clear again. She remembered the fading song, her grandmother, the vibrant life of the forest. The starstone pulsed gently, a steady heartbeat against the swirling confusion. Listen to the path, the mossling's voice echoed in her mind, a whisper that seemed to emanate from the starstone itself. Lyra took a deep breath and tried to listen, not with her ears, but with her whole being. She focused on the faint, almost imperceptible hum of the song, which felt like a fragile thread being pulled taut through the vastness of the forest. The glimmerwing continued its erratic dance, but Lyra noticed it always returned to a particular direction, a subtle pull even amidst the shifting landscape. She began to follow that pull, ignoring the illusions that tried to trick her eyes. She placed one foot carefully in front of the other, relying on the glimmerwing's frantic guidance and the steady warmth of the starstone. The chill deepened, and the sickly green light of the fungi seemed to pulse with a melancholic rhythm. Shadows stretched long and distorted, making the ancient trees seem to loom and twist into monstrous shapes. Suddenly, the glimmerwing darted forward with an urgent burst of light, then dipped sharply. Lyra followed, her heart pounding. The trees ahead parted slightly, revealing not another glade, but a vast, silent chasm. It stretched before her, an impossibly deep rift in the earth, its edges jagged and dark. From its depths emanated an icy draught, carrying with it not a sound, but an absence of sound, a profound sucking quiet that seemed to devour all other noises. This was it. This was the fissure. But it was far, far larger than she had imagined from her grandmother's stories. It was a scar across the very face of the world, stretching as far as she could see in either direction. And from its deepest point, a faint, almost invisible plume of shimmering, colorless mist rose, swirling slowly upwards. This was the visible sign of the echoing hush, a silent breath from the wound. The glimmerwing, exhausted, landed on Lyra's shoulder, its light barely a flicker. It trembled, its tiny wings drooped. Lyra gently stroked it with a finger, offering what comfort she could. She looked down into the chasm, feeling the immense gravity of the task before her. It was not enough to find the fissure. She had to go into it, into the source of the echoing hush, to find the heartwood, to soothe its sorrow. As she stood at the precipice, a soft, insistent whisper came from the starstone in her hand. It was the mosling's voice, clear as a bell, despite the distance. The heartwood is within, child. But it is not a place you walk to. It is a place you feel towards. Only those with pure intent and unwavering heart can enter its sacred space. Look for the ancient bridge, woven not of stone but of echoes and starlight. It appears only to those who truly seek. No, Dantini. Lyra gazed into the abyss, her small figure dwarfed by the enormity of the chasm. An ancient bridge, woven of echoes and starlight? Her eyes scanned the darkness, seeing only jagged rock and the swirling, colorless mist. But then, as her gaze settled on a point far below, where the mist seemed to condense and swirl most intensely, a faint shimmer began to appear. It was gossamer thin, almost invisible, but as she focused, a delicate arc of pearlescent light slowly materialized across the chasm, seeming to connect her side to a distant, obscured opening deep within the fissure itself. It was a bridge of pure magic, formed from light and, well, echoes. She could almost hear the faint, lingering whispers of long-lost sounds emanating from it. The glimmer wing stirred on her shoulder, its light flaring weakly in confirmation. Lyra took a deep breath, the cold air filling her lungs. Her hand tightened around the starstone. The comfort stone in her satchel felt like a solid presence. This was it. This was the true threshold. She had found the fissure, and the path into its heart. The song was here, waiting to be rediscovered, waiting to be healed. With a surge of courage, Lyra stepped onto the shimmering bridge, her small shadow swallowed by the vastness of the chasm, ready to descend into the unknown depths of the Whisperwood's ailing heart. The shimmering bridge, spun from starlight and ancient whispers, pulsed softly beneath Lyra's feet. It wasn't solid like stone, nor airy like mist, but something in between. A pathway woven from pure magic that hummed with a low, resonant frequency. Lyra felt more in her bones than heard with her ears. Each step she took sent faint ripples of light across its surface, like skipping stones across a still luminous pond. Below her, the chasm yawned, not into utter darkness, but into a dizzying kaleidoscope of shifting luminescent minerals embedded in the rock face, glowing with faint blues, purples, and greens. It was as if she were descending into the very throat of a slumbering colossal gem. The air grew cooler with every foot of descent, carrying with it a scent Lyra couldn't quite place, like damp earth, ancient wood, and something else, something profoundly sorrowful, like a memory of rain on forgotten leaves. The usual gentle currents of the Whisperwood's breezes were absent here, replaced by a profound stillness that pressed in on her, muffling all sound save for the soft thrum of the bridge and the steady beat of her own heart. The starstone in her hand warmed, its light growing from a gentle glimmer to a steady, comforting pulse, casting a soft, golden orb around her, pushing back the deep, quiet gloom. It felt less like a tool now, and more like a companion, its warmth a silent reassurance in the face of such immense, hushed majesty. The descent was long, a slow, winding spiral into the depths. Lyra kept her gaze fixed ahead, occasionally glancing at the starstone, which seemed to be subtly guiding her, its light intensifying slightly when she instinctively swayed towards one side or the other. After what felt like an age, the bridge began to level out, its angles softening, until at last it dissolved not into solid ground, but into a vast, undulating expanse of luminous moss. She stepped onto it, her boots sinking slightly into the springy, glowing carpet. The moss was a deep, phosphorescent emerald, casting a gentle, otherworldly light across a cavern of truly colossal proportions. This was no ordinary cave. It was the heart of the Whisperwood itself, a place of immense, ancient roots and living rock. Giant, gnarled roots, thicker than the tallest trees Lyra knew, snaked across the cavern floor and up the walls, their surfaces shimmering with faint internal light, like veins of silver beneath dark bark. Some pulsed with a dim, mournful glow, others were entirely dark, like sleeping giants. The air here was heavy, thick with a profound, aching silence. It wasn't just the absence of sound, it was the presence of silence, a tangible weight that pressed against her ears, a quiet so deep it felt as though the very air held its breath. This was the ailment of the Whisperwood, not a sickness of body, but of spirit. The song, the living melody that wove through every leaf and stream, every creature and stone, was not merely diminished here, it was utterly, profoundly absent. It was like standing in a great hall where a magnificent orchestra once played, but now only the empty chairs remained, echoing with the ghost of forgotten music. Lyra took a deep breath, the cold, sorrowful air filling her lungs. The starstone thrummed in her hand, its light unwavering, a beacon in the vast stillness. She began to walk, her footsteps barely audible on the glowing moss. The cavern stretched out before her, a labyrinth of intertwining roots and colossal rock formations, some resembling ancient sleeping beasts, others like petrified waterfalls. Above, the ceiling soared into an unseen darkness, so high that it seemed to disappear into a sky of its own. As she moved deeper, Lyra began to notice subtle signs of the song's absence. The moss, while luminous, lacked the vibrant, shifting hues she knew it possessed in healthy parts of the wood. The great roots, though alive, seemed to draw their light from some internal finite source, rather than the boundless energy of the song. There were no trickling streams, no rustling leaves, no chirping insects, nothing that usually composed the gentle symphony of the Whisperwood. Only the oppressive quiet. Then, a flicker. From behind a particularly massive gnarled root, Lyra saw a faint, almost imperceptible shimmer of light, like a tiny, dying ember. She walked towards it, her heart quickening. As she drew closer, the shimmer resolved into a delicate crystalline flower, no larger than her thumb, growing from a crevice in the root. Its petals were translucent, shimmering with a faint silvery light, but they were curled inwards, as if in pain, and utterly silent. This was a moon-petal bloom, a flower famed throughout the Whisperwood for its ethereal, bell-like chime that echoed the purest notes of the song. Here, it was a silent, sorrowful testament to the forest's suffering. Lyra knelt beside it, her shadow falling gently over the tiny bloom. She reached out with her free hand, not to touch but to hover, letting the starstone's warmth radiate towards it. The moment the starstone's light touched the moon petal, a faint tremor ran through the flower. One curled petal slowly, painfully, began to unfurl, revealing a tiny, almost invisible teardrop of dew at its heart. And then, a sound. So faint, so fragile, Lyra almost missed it. A tiny, high-pitched ide ping, like a single, distant chime. It was barely a whisper of sound, but it was there. A ghost of the moon petal's true voice. The sound, though fleeting, seemed to stir something in the cavern. A ripple of cold energy, like a sigh, passed through the air. The starstone pulsed more strongly, urging Lyra forward, deeper into the heart. The moon petal, having offered its solitary note, seemed to close again, exhausted. Lyra stood, feeling a renewed surge of determination. The song wasn't entirely gone. It was merely sleeping, fragmented, waiting to be reawakened. She followed the subtle guidance of the starstone, which now seemed to point towards a narrow passage between two colossal roots, their surfaces smooth and dark like polished obsidian. The passage opened into a series of smaller chambers, each more ancient and hushed than the last. Here, the roots were even more intertwined, forming natural arches and tunnels, their surfaces adorned with strange glowing fungi that pulsed with a soft bioluminescent light, like constellations scattered across an underground sky. In one such chamber, Lyra found herself in what felt like a vast, subterranean cathedral. The roots here were not merely thick but grew into intricate, delicate patterns, forming a soaring dome above her head. From the very center of this dome, a continuous slow drip of water fell, not onto the ground, but onto a series of concave, crystalline basins carved into the root structure, each catching a single shimmering drop before overflowing into the next. The sound was not the cheerful plink of a mountain spring, but a slow, rhythmic, drip, 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 each drop echoing with a profound, almost audible sorrow. This was the Weeping Cavern, a place spoken of in ancient tales, where the very essence of the Whisperwood's grief manifested as crystalline tears. Lyra approached the basins, her heart heavy. The water within them shimmered with a faint, silver light, and as she looked closer, she realized it wasn't just water. Tiny, luminous motes, like liquid starlight, swirled within each drop. This was the sap of the Whisperwood, mingled with its sorrow. As she watched, a small shimmering creature, no larger than her thumb, emerged from behind one of the basins. It was a sprite, not of the airy, playful kind, but one born of deep earth and ancient magic. Its body was made of interwoven moss and tiny glowing bark, its eyes like polished amber, wide and filled with a timeless sadness. Its wings, like those of a dragonfly, were translucent and shimmered with the colors of the weeping water. The sprite hovered before Lyra, its tiny form radiating a profound melancholic energy. It did not speak with words, but Lyra felt its presence, its ancient grief, its silent plea. It was a root song keeper, one of the last of its kind, bound to the deepest heart of the wood. Its purpose was to guard the residual echoes of the song, to remember what had been lost. As Lyra extended the starstone towards it, a faint, almost imperceptible hum emanated from the keeper. Its amber eyes fixed on the starstone, and Lyra felt a rush of images and feelings flood her mind. A vibrant melody, when every leaf sang, every stone hummed. A gradual fading, a slow erosion of sound, like sand, sifting through fingers. A growing silence, heavy and suffocating, pushing the song into smaller, forgotten pockets. A discord, not an enemy with a name, but a creeping, insidious forgetfulness, a dulling of senses, a loss of connection to the true rhythm of life. The keeper hovered closer, its tiny, mossy hand reaching out to gently touch the starstone. As their two sources of magic met, the images intensified. Lyra understood. The song wasn't stolen or broken, it was fragmented, scattered, and deeply asleep beneath layers of silence and disuse. It was like a great living tapestry, its threads still there, but tangled, muted, and covered in dust. The discord wasn't an active force of destruction, but a passive, suffocating dullness that had crept into the wood, causing the song to recede, to dim, to be forgotten. The creatures of the Whisperwood, even the trees themselves, had slowly lost their ability to hear, to feel, to sing the song. The root song keeper, its silent language clearer now, conveyed the true task. Lyra wasn't just here to find the song. She was here to reawaken it, to remind the Whisperwood of its own voice. The starstone, the keeper implied, was a key, not to unlock a door, but to resonate with the scattered fragments, to amplify their forgotten notes, and to weave them back into a cohesive whole. The keeper then turned, its tiny luminous form drifting towards a section of the cavern wall that seemed to ripple like liquid shadow. It was not a physical opening but a shimmering curtain of darkness, deeper than any shadow Lyra had ever seen. This was the entrance to the luminous labyrinth, a place of ancient power where the very threads of the song lay most densely, yet most deeply entwined with the encroaching silence. Lyra nodded, her resolve hardening. She had come this far. She would not falter now. With a deep breath, she stepped towards the shimmering veil. The root song keeper, with a silent, sorrowful bow, faded back into the shadows behind the weeping caverns, leaving Lyra to face the next threshold alone. As Lyra pushed through the curtain of shadow, it dissolved around her, revealing not darkness, but a breathtaking, swirling vortex of light. She found herself standing on a narrow pathway of glowing crystal, suspended amidst a vast three-dimensional maze. Roots, thicker than ancient oak trees, pulsed with soft internal light, forming arches, bridges, and walls that twisted and turned in every conceivable direction. Interspersed among them were colossal crystal formations, some clear as ice, others shimmering with the colors of a distant nebula. The air here was alive with faint, almost imperceptible hums, like the distant memory of a chord, echoing through the labyrinth. This was the luminous labyrinth, a place of both profound beauty and bewildering complexity. The path ahead wasn't clear. There were countless forks, upward spirals, and downward slopes, all seemingly identical in their radiant glow. The starstone in her hand pulsed with a rhythmic beat, its light intensifying, casting a golden glow that seemed to seek out certain paths. Lyra realized the starstone wasn't merely illuminating the way. It was reacting to the faint echoes of the song, guiding her towards where its fragments were strongest, or perhaps most deeply buried. She began to move, trusting the starstone. It was like following a trail of breadcrumbs made of light and sound. Sometimes a particular crystal would glow brighter as she approached, or a root would hum with a slightly clearer note. These were the whispers of the song, trying to break through the pervasive silence. But for every glimmer of sound, There were vast stretches of absolute quiet, where the roots seemed duller, the crystals cold and unresponsive. These were the pockets of discord, where the silence had taken deepest root. Passing through them felt like walking through a heavy fog, making her feel disoriented and strangely heavy-hearted. At one point, the path led her to a vast chamber where the very air felt thick and unmoving. Here, the roots were entirely dark, their light extinguished, and the crystals were dull, opaque, like eyes that had lost their sight. This was a deep pocket of discord. The silence here was not merely an absence of sound, but an active force, pressing against her, trying to snuff out the Starstone's light, to dampen her courage. Lyra felt a chill deep in her bones, a feeling of utter despair that was not her own, but a reflection of the Whisperwood's profound sorrow. Clutching the Starstone tighter, she pushed forward. Its light, though dimmed by the oppressive silence, still held firm. She remembered the Root Songkeeper's message. The song was not gone, merely forgotten. She had to remind it. Taking a deep breath, Lyra closed her eyes and focused on the Starstone. She pictured the vibrant, singing Whisperwood she knew, the gentle melodies of its streams, the rustling symphony of its leaves, the joyful chirps of its creatures. She poured her own courage and hope into the stone. When she opened her eyes, the Starstone flared with a sudden brilliant pulse of golden light. The light pushed back against the oppressive silence, creating a small, shimmering bubble around her. Within this bubble, Lyra felt the despair recede, replaced by a surge of warmth and determination. She saw faintly, a tiny, almost invisible thread of light snaking away from her, deeper into the dark chamber. This was the song's faint echo, struggling to survive. Following this fragile thread, Lyra found herself at the very heart of the discordant chamber. There, embedded in a massive, dark root, was a crystalline sphere, about the size of her fist. It was completely opaque, dark as night, and radiated a profound chill. This was not a fragment of the song but a core of the discord itself, a point where the silence had solidified. The Starstone thrummed violently in her hand, pulling her towards it. Lyra understood. This wasn't a place to avoid, but a wound to be healed. Cautiously, she placed the Starstone against the dark sphere. For a moment, nothing happened. The chill intensified, trying to push her away. But Lyra held firm, channeling all her focus, all her hope, into the Starstone. She pictured the moon petal's faint chime, the weeping water, the Root Songkeeper's silent plea. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, a faint golden light began to bloom from the point where the Starstone touched the dark sphere. It was like watching a sunrise in miniature. The golden light spread, pushing back the inky blackness of the sphere, revealing faint, swirling patterns within its depths. As the light grew, a low, resonant hum began to emanate from the sphere, a deep, foundational note, like the very heartbeat of the earth. It wasn't a melody yet, but a single, powerful tone, pure and unwavering. The effect was immediate and profound. The oppressive silence in the chamber fractured, pulling back like a receding tide. The dull, dark roots around them began to pulse with a faint crimson light, like blood returning to ancient veins. The opaque crystals shimmered, their surfaces becoming translucent, reflecting the newfound light. And from the very fabric of the chamber, Lyra heard it, a chorus of tiny, almost imperceptible jeepings and itings, like 1,000 distant bells awakening. It was the moon petals, the crystal flowers embedded in the roots, finally finding their voice, however faint. Lyra felt a surge of elation, a profound sense of accomplishment. She had done it. She had reawakened a fragment of the song, transforming a core of discord into a point of resonance. The crystalline sphere, now glowing with a soft, steady golden light, detached itself from the root, hovering gently in the air. It pulsed with the deep foundational note, a beacon of renewed hope. But even as she basked in this small victory, the Starstone pulsed with a different message, a new direction. The newly awakened sphere, glowing brightly, now pointed deeper into the labyrinth, towards a passage Lyra hadn't noticed before, hidden behind a shimmering curtain of golden light. This was just one fragment, one note in a vast, sleeping symphony. The true heart of the song, the wellspring from which all melodies flowed, lay further still, deeper within the Whisperwood's hidden depths. With the glowing sphere now hovering gently beside her, a companion and a guide, Lyra stepped towards the golden curtain. The path ahead was still long, filled with unknown challenges and untold wonders, but now, she carried not just the Starstone's light, but the very first reawakened note of the Whisperwood's ancient song. She was ready. The golden curtain shimmered, not a solid barrier, but a veil woven from pure, incandescent light. Lyra, clutching the Starstone which pulsed in harmony with the small, reawakened note hovering beside her, took a deep breath. The air beyond the curtain felt different, not cold or hot, but alive with a subtle electric hum, like the anticipation before a grand performance. She stepped through, and the world dissolved and reformed around her. Gone were the familiar greens and browns of the Whisperwood. She stood now, in a realm of pure, vibrant light, where the ground beneath her feet felt like solidified starlight, and the air was thick with shimmering motes of raw magic. This was the heart of the song, a place beyond ordinary perception, where melody was form and light was sound. Before her stretched what could only be described as a garden of resonant echoes. Towering, crystalline structures soared towards an unseen ceiling, each spire and arch glowing with an inner luminescence. Delicate ethereal flora, like flowers spun from moonbeams and stardust, bloomed in silent splendor, their petals and leaves shimmering with every color imaginable, waiting for the vibrational kiss of the song to awaken their true voices. They hummed with a potential energy, a silent promise. The small, reawakened note, her constant companion, vibrated gently, pulling her forward. It was like a tiny living compass, pointing towards the deeper silence that still reigned. The Starstone in her hand warmed, its light growing steadier, a beacon in this realm of pure, unmanifested energy. Lyra began to walk, her footsteps leaving faint, echoing ripples across the starlit ground. The silence here was not empty, but heavy, expectant, like a vast, empty concert hall waiting for the first chord. As she ventured deeper, she encountered her first challenge. A labyrinth of silent chimes, slender crystalline columns that crisscrossed her path, blocking the way forward. They varied subtly in size and translucence, but none made a sound. The reawakened note pulsed, urging her to listen not with her ears, but with her heart. Lyra closed her eyes, focusing on the Starstone's gentle thrum and the note's quiet vibration. She extended her hand, touching one of the chimes. A faint, almost imperceptible tremor ran through it, a silent frequency. She touched another, feeling a different, subtle vibration. It was a puzzle of hidden harmonies. Using the Starstone's light, which seemed to reveal the unseen, Lyra began to discern faint, intricate patterns of energy flowing between the chimes. Each chime had a unique, silent signature. With careful intuition, guided by the Starstone's intuitive wisdom, and the first note's gentle promptings, she began to align them. She shifted one chime, then another, feeling the silent frequencies subtly change, connecting. It was like arranging an invisible orchestra, each instrument waiting for its place. Slowly, carefully, a path began to coalesce. As she placed the final chime in its correct vibrational alignment, a soft ethereal resonance rippled through the air. The chimes began to glow faintly, not with sound, but with a vibrant, silent hum of pure energy, opening a clear passage through the labyrinth. Lyra stepped through, feeling a surge of quiet triumph. She was not just finding the song, she was learning its language. Beyond the chimes, the landscape shifted. The crystalline structures gave way to vast open spaces where shimmering, iridescent mists swirled. It was here that she encountered a presence. Not a creature of flesh and bone, but a being of light and thought, flickering like a dying ember. It was a colossal, luminous moth-like creature, its wings once magnificent, now muted and tattered, its many eyes dim. This was the Echo Weaver, an ancient guardian of this realm. It floated towards Lyra, its form barely holding together, its light fading. It communicated not with words, but with gentle, sorrowful impressions that drifted into Lyra's mind. Child of starlight, you have heard the whisper. You carry a thread of the song. Lyra felt a profound sadness emanating from the Echo Weaver. The song, she projected back, her thoughts clear and strong. Why has it faded? The Echo Weaver's form flickered again, a shimmering sigh. It was not taken. It was drawn inward, held, imprisoned by grief. It showed Lyra a vision, a time long, long ago when the Whisperwood pulsed with an overwhelming symphony of light. And at its heart, a being of immense power, the Heartstone Sentinel, whose purpose was to gather and radiate the song, a living conduit. But then, a great cataclysm, a sorrow so profound it fractured the very fabric of magic, swept through the land. The Sentinel, in its despair and fear of losing the song forever, had drawn hollow of its essence into itself, believing it was protecting it from annihilation. It became a living void, a black hole of resonance, absorbing all sound, all vibration, all life rather than letting it scatter and be lost. It was not malice, but a desperate, misguided act of preservation. It sleeps now, the Echo Weaver's thoughts continued, a prison of sorrow, holding the song in silent vigil. It believes it keeps the song safe, but it merely keeps it bound. How do I release it? Lyra asked, her heart aching for the ancient sentinel. You must remind it, the Echo Weaver projected, its light dimming further. Remind it that the song is meant to flow, to share, to connect. You carry the first thread, the memory of its true purpose. Find the spire of muted harmonies. Reach the sentinel, and awaken its heart with the truth. With that, the Echo Weaver seemed to dissolve into the shimmering mist, its light a final poignant twinkle, leaving Lyra with a profound sense of purpose. Lyra looked ahead. The mist parted to reveal a colossal, spiraling structure that pierced the unseen sky, the spire of muted harmonies. It was a mountain of polished, dark crystal, absorbing all light, all sound. The silence emanating from it was absolute, a heavy weight that pressed down on her spirit. This was the Heartstone Sentinel's prison, its sanctuary of sorrow. The reawakened note pulsed more urgently now, a tiny defiant spark against the overwhelming silence. Lyra began her ascent. The spire was not a simple climb. Each step was a trial, designed to test her resolve and her connection to the nascent song within her. The first challenge was the river of forgotten melodies, a wide, shimmering chasm that flowed with liquid light, reflecting silent tears. Stepping stones, barely visible, appeared only when she hummed a pure, resonant tone, drawn from the starstone's core and amplified by the first note. It took immense concentration, each step a delicate balance of sound and intention, to cross the river. Next came the chasm of discordant whispers. As she climbed higher, the air grew thick with illusions, faint, confusing sounds that tried to lure her off balance. Whispers of doubt, echoes of ancient fears, fragmented, jarring noises that grated against her soul. Lyra pressed the starstone to her chest, focusing on its steady, pure light and the unwavering hum of the first note. She shut out the chaos, letting the pure vibration within her anchor her, guiding her steadily upward. The higher she ascended, the more pronounced the presence of the Heartstone Sentinel became. The air grew heavy, thick with an ancient, profound sorrow that threatened to engulf her. This was the veil of sorrow, the Sentinel's grief radiating outwards, trying to protect its silence. Lyra felt a crushing weight on her spirit, a deep melancholy that threatened to make her give up. But then, she thought of the Whisperwood, of its muted beauty, of the silent forest, waiting for its voice. She thought of the promise she had made. With renewed determination she projected her own hope, her unwavering belief in the song's return, using the first note she carried as a shield against the despair. She pushed forward, one step after another, her heart beating in rhythm with the starstone, until she finally reached the summit. There, in a vast, cavernous chamber at the spire's peak, stood the Heartstone Sentinel. It was a colossal, crystalline being, easily the size of a mountain, its form a complex, intricate tessellation of dark, polished crystal. It pulsed with a dim, silent light, like a black star absorbing all energy around it. It wasn't aggressive. It was simply Itherae, a monument to ancient grief, radiating an oppressive, absolute silence that seemed to swallow even the light of the starstone. Lyra approached, her small figure dwarfed by the Sentinel's immense presence. The Echo Weaver's fading thoughts echoed in her mind. Remind it, remind it. She knew she couldn't fight it. She couldn't force the song out. She had to waken in it from its sorrow. She held out the starstone, which now pulsed with a vibrant, determined light, and let the first reawakened note float towards the Sentinel. The note, a tiny, courageous beacon, drifted through the oppressive silence until it touched the Sentinel's crystalline surface. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a faint, almost imperceptible tremor rippled through the colossal form. It was a memory, a ghost of a vibration. Lyra knew what she had to do. This wasn't about taking the song. It was about giving it back, helping the sentinel remember its true purpose, to flow, to share. She placed the starstone gently against the sentinel's base. The starstone, being a pure conduit of starlight and celestial music, began to resonate with the first note, amplifying it. Lyra closed her eyes. She didn't just play the song, she declaimed the conductor. She opened her heart, allowing the first note to expand within her, filling her with the memory of all the song's potential, all the forgotten melodies, all the unheard harmonies. She channeled the starstone's pure light, the strength of the first note, and her own pure intent, her love for the Whisperwood, her hope for its future, her understanding of the sentinel's profound, ancient sorrow. She projected her compassion, her belief that the song was not meant to be hoarded, but to be shared, to nourish, to connect. Slowly, agonizingly, the Heartstone sentinel began to hum. It was a deep, resonant vibration that started within its very core, a rumble beneath the starlit ground and radiated outwards. It wasn't the full song yet, but a profound, powerful awakening. The dark crystals of its form began to shimmer, catching the light of the starstone, revealing hidden depths of color. The starstone pulsed brilliantly, a key turning in a lock, unlocking the sentinel's sorrow-bound heart. The sentinel began to weep, but these were not tears of sadness. They were tears of pure, vibrant sound, of liquid light and shimmering color, flowing down its vast crystalline form. And then, the song burst forth. Not as a single melody, but as an infinite harmonious explosion of light, color, and sound. It was the grand, sweeping symphony of creation itself, a chorus of 1,000,000 voices, a river of pure, unadulterated magic. It swelled, filling the chamber, washing over Lyra, bathing her in warmth and pure joy. The song flowed through the sentinel, which was no longer a prison of sorrow but a magnificent living source, a radiant conduit. It flowed in through Lyra, filling her with an indescribable sense of connection to everything. It flowed in through the starstone, amplifying its celestial music, and then, with unimaginable power, it rushed outwards, back through the golden curtain, through the garden of resonant echoes, and out into the waiting Whisperwood. The chamber was flooded with the song. The echo weaver, wherever it had dissolved, seemed to coalesce again, its form now vibrant, brilliant with every color imaginable, its light strong and steady, its voice a clear, pure note joining the rising chorus. The Heartstone sentinel, its form now alive with shimmering light and color, pulsed with the rhythm of the universe, its vast crystalline face seeming to smile. A silent, cosmic smile of release and joy. Lyra was overwhelmed, yet filled with immense peace. She felt herself gently guided, enveloped by the joyous rush of the returning song. The journey back was a blur of harmonious sound and dazzling light, a sensation of being carried on a wave of pure magic. She opened her eyes, finding herself back where she had started, at the foot of the ancient majestic tree. But now, the tree was humming, glowing with an inner light, its leaves shimmering with vibrant, impossibly bright colors. The air itself was a symphony, a joyous blend of rustling leaves, babbling streams, and the happy chirping of birds. The Whisperwood was alive again. Flowers bloomed in a riot of impossible hues, streams burled with melodic laughter, and every creature sang with newfound joy. The very air vibrated with magic, a palpable, wondrous presence that had been missing for so long. Lyra felt changed. She had grown, not just in stature, but in spirit. Her eyes sparkled with an inner light, and her hair seemed to shimmer with faint starlight. The starstone in her hand now pulsed with a gentle, steady light, a constant reminder of the song, a living connection to the heart of the Whisperwood. She looked at the reawakened forest, a wide, radiant smile on her face. Her quest was complete. She knew her journey wasn't truly over. She was now a part of the song, a guardian of its melody, forever attuned to its whispers, its joy, its every note. She lay down on the soft mossy earth beneath the ancient tree, feeling the vibrant hum of the world beneath her, the song cradling her. She closed her eyes, knowing that magic was not just in distant lands or forgotten realms, but in the very heart of everything, waiting to be heard, waiting to be loved. Sleep came easily, a dream woven from starlight and eternal song, a lullaby whispered by the reawakened Whisperwood.